Final Fantasy VII Revelation. Right off the bat, spoilers for all of Final Fantasy VII re-trilogy, but original as well. We're going to be talking about that, as has been the case with all the content I make about the re-trilogy. So, I am recording this on the morning after Summer Games Fest. I did a whole stream of it. You can check my VOD channel for it. I didn't really have much insight to give during that time. I was mostly just freaking out, but it is here. Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy Part 3 is entitled Final Fantasy VII Revelation. Interestingly enough, I don't actually have a ton to say about the title. I don't actually have a lot to say about it. I think it could be referential to the revelations we're going to get throughout the story. Sephiroth, elements of Sephiroth's character, I think it could be. I need to think more about that. A revelation of the scope of the events to come, and what will be imparted, and another element of, or layer of understanding the story. I don't really know. I haven't thought about that much. I still maybe need to. But it's a cool name. I really like it. That aside, I've made two gigantic videos about Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If you would like to watch those, I definitely recommend it. I think they're very comprehensive. They're hours and hours and hours long, but I think they're some of my best work. Lots of theory and analysis and review and some critique. But it's very comprehensive retrospectively. It's rumination as well. They're there if you're interested, and I will be referring to some of my ideas in those throughout this. Sorry, I have some notes on my phone that I'm looking at, but I just kind of wanted to take the time here to talk about some talking points for Part 3, for Revelation, some interview stuff that's come out overnight, and some of the things about the trailer and some of my thoughts on all of that. So, Revelation has a title already talked about. There is a interview that has been translated, which I will be going through point by point from a tweet. But I have some things to talk about outside of that I'll just quickly dwell on. So, immediately, one of the first things I noticed in the trailer was the narrator is Gina Talk's voice, which is also the narrator for the first trailer, which is really cool. It sort of comes full circle, and I think it ties things in a nice little bow really well. It's thematically cohesive, and it sort of coalesces with the idea that maybe where our destination for this series is a return back to zero. Redefined, expanded upon, but ultimately a celebration of it, and as a result, in addition to other things, unchanged. But also just bookended with that it's very poetic to be bookended by the narrator. Now, again, big spoilers. Just to reiterate something I've talked about for ages, as a result of a lot of things I've talked about within my videos, you can check those out, like I said, but I do think that Zack and Aerith, spoilers again, will remain dead. I've talked about my ideas about why Aerith is showing herself to Cloud. I won't get into those, but whatever the reason and whatever the specific mechanisms about why Zack is doing his thing in the story, well, I think we know a lot of those mechanisms already. I think it'll all end with both of them returning to the live stream, returning to their original fate, which Aerith is already within that fate, but I think they'll both be dead by the end of this, and their presence will be accentuated and exaggerated, and they will absolutely be essential and have been essential to the quest so far and the success. But when all is said and done, I think they will return to their original fate. Now, these are just scattered thoughts, scattered notes about my thoughts on the trailer. I've thought about the locations we're going to visit throughout Part 3, throughout Revelation. The Northern Crater, the Icicle Inn, and the northern, I guess, climbs and the snowy areas. Wutai, of course, which we'll talk about, Rocket Town, which we'll talk about, but I never really paid much attention to Medeal for some reason. I didn't think about it that much, but I just want to say it looks incredible. It looks incredible in this trailer. I think it looks amazing. And I love the openness of everything. From what it seems like, the player will be able to explore, pretty close to the beginning. We'll be able to explore so much of the world, be able to go anywhere. Certain things will be blocked off, certain things will be unavailable, but it will be open, for lack of a better term. And I think that's a really good decision. I love the idea that it opens like that. I love the moments in Final Fantasy games where the world seems to open up, and you get the airship, and you can just explore anywhere. They're kind of recreating that with Revelation, with the Highwind, except it's a whole game of that. So if you look at this story as 3 parts of one cohesive, consistent game, this is the 3rd act, and that's where the world opens up, and that feels very fitting. But with regards to that, I've talked a lot in the past about a Tifa point of view. I think Tifa is definitely one of the most important characters about this section of the story, and as a result will be one of the most important characters in Revelation. And I've talked about the idea for multiple reasons. Cloud's state of mind being unreliable, Aerith no longer being present in the way she was, Tifa taking up more responsibility, and Tifa being the specific sort of person, the only person who can get Cloud out of this in the way that, because of who she is. I have loved the idea of a Tifa POV. Tifa being the protagonist for the first act, or the first half, or a significant section of the story. I've really loved that idea, and there's a scene in the trailer where the party sort of jumps out, and Tifa sort of takes the lead, and I think that embodies what I imagine her role to be, and her spirit, and I love Tifa so much, and I can't wait to see her in this story. I really feel like, as mostly everyone feels, things will get very devastatingly dark, and delve into horrific, brutal darkness, but the ascent will be unbelievable, and I think that is something that Tifa will experience as well, to a huge degree. She's the only one who can save Cloud, as he is, I think. Without her, I don't think it's possible, and I think Sephiroth knew that, which is why we have Chapter 9 in Rebirth. Now, this is something also that's been going around. It seems like Sephiroth has a new voice actor. I heard his voice in the trailer. I thought it was more Gina talking, but if you look at the lines that were said, it isn't something that Gina would really say. It's a Sephiroth taunty line to Cloud. I didn't really realize what was going on, but I've watched the trailer one more time, and yeah, Sephiroth is saying things to Cloud, but it's not Sephiroth's voice. It is not the former voice actor, Tyler, starts with a C. Apparently he was unavailable for recording for Sephiroth for this game, for Revelation, so he's been replaced by Travis Willingham. I find this to be strange. Firstly, I find it strange that in Part 3 of this incredible, epic, world-spanning franchise, the defining part, the finale, he's not available? That's just strange to me, I guess, but hey, everyone has different priorities. As for Travis Willingham, I really like him. I've seen him on Critical Role. I like him as a person, but I also have liked some of his roles throughout the years. I love his Roy Mustang, a couple of his other roles, and I think the tiny bit we hear of him as Sephiroth, I quite like. Now, I have gotten used to the Sephiroth voice from the first 2 parts. I think the voice itself is very fitting for Sephiroth, while I do have some criticisms of the amount of weight and the consistency of the performance, specifically in Remake. It's improved in Rebirth. I don't think it's been a perfect portrayal, but I do like the voice. I have gotten used to it, and so I'm going to miss it. Having said that, I think it's a great challenge and a great honor for Travis Willingham to have this role. I like what I heard from his Sephiroth, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So yeah, that's worth noting, and I hope it doesn't really change the impact of Sephiroth, because we'll get into Sephiroth. Actually, you know what, let's get into Sephiroth right now. He may be, outside of Cloud, the most important character in this specific part. Maybe Tifa. But yeah, Sephiroth is going to be essential, and I think a lot of this story will be putting Cloud back together, but also Sephiroth in a parallel sort of thing. I would love there to be scenes between Sephiroth and Aerith. I would love him to have a ton of emphasis. I would love the idea of the child Sephiroth we've seen in Ever Crisis and all that. I've talked about this in my Rebirth video, being maybe saved in a way. Having a connection that he was bereft of, feeling human. Maybe Aerith being able to embrace him in a way. These two people vying for control of Cloud. I love the idea that they are two people who can understand each other better than anyone. Specifically, Aerith understanding Sephiroth. That intimacy. I would love an embrace with Aerith and Sephiroth, where Sephiroth is able to be put to rest, because he has never been at rest, and this series will end. And I think it's very interesting that there's very little Sephiroth in the trailer outside of that line, but he's in the poster. He's in the poster. Let me just show this. Right here. Interesting. And Audrey from Twitter says, each game has had its own specific song. Remake has had Hollow. Rebirth has had No Promises to Keep. Cloud-centric, Aerith-centric. I look at Hollow as also reminiscent of Zack too, but mostly Cloud. Cloud-centric, Aerith-centric. Third one, Sephiroth-centric song? That could be amazing. But yes, I have some stuff to go over, which I'll get to in a sec. So I think Sephiroth will be huge for this game, even bigger than he is. Like, obviously, Sephiroth is iconic and necessary to FF7, but even more weight. I think this will be his biggest game. I think he could have a really incredible arc, maybe to do with the child Sephiroth who desired to be a hero, maybe the one who desires connection, maybe the one who's bereft of living a normal life, who could see some connection with Aerith. I'm just really hyped for Sephiroth, and I think this game is the game for him to make that step up to maybe one of the best antagonists I've ever seen. I would love that. Also, just a tiny thing, I geeked out seeing Rufus. Rufus is one of my favorite characters in FF7 Re-Trilogy. I love how they've expanded upon him. I've analyzed him to hell and back in those videos. I can't wait to see how his story ends. I've talked about this before, though. I just wanted to mention it. There's also a big focus on the combat in this. I don't have much to say about it, but the combat looks great. Rebirth is one of my favorite games to play, and I thought it was really interesting that they talked about perfecting the combat when I thought it was close to perfect already. But I digress. Love to see Sid and Vincent being playable. They look very fun. The different modes with the beast form for Vincent, the hybrid, the different, I forget what they're called, but the outfits and how that gives you like a predisposition to a certain class. That's cool. I like these things being added to it. I'll definitely explore a lot of that. There's a lot of emphasis on the weapons, as you'd imagine there would be. They're iconic, and they will lead to incredible fights, and the combat will be huge for this game. Don't have a ton to say about it, except that I'm really excited for it. I love playing Rebirth. I love the combat system. I love how it evolved from Remake. It was polished, and I can't wait to see more added to it. I do hope there's not a sense of them adding too much to it, but I have trust. And then another thing is, there was a line throughout the presentation about how the characters will be fleshed out extensively, and there seems to be an emphasis on extensive character work for the party. In OG, it was a bit uneven. You know, Barrett got a great character story, a character arc. Cloud did. Aerith, Tifa. But then there was some unevenness. Like, for example, Sid got a decent amount of focus. Yuffie was completely optional. Red got a good story in Cosmo Canyon, but was very uneven. So I think there's an unevenness there, and it seems like they're putting a lot of emphasis on really driving home the stories of each party member and making them all fully fleshed out, and a lot of them already are. Tifa, Barret, Cloud, Aerith, Red, Nanaki, I should say. Kate's already really charming. Yuffie already has a great story, and I think will be fulfilled fully with the Wutai stuff, and then they're going to focus more on Vincent and Sid. I love that they're really giving each character, each party member, their moment, their emphasis, and making them all really important. Because I love this cast. I love them, and I think they all deserve a spotlight. And it was uneven in OG, but throughout Remake and Rebirth, there's been more of a character focus, and it seems like there's continuity with that. I mentioned Icicle Inn, really looking forward to seeing that. I love snowy locations. I can't wait for the locations. Icicle Inn, Mideel looks incredible, like I said. Wutai, which we'll talk more about. Like, all the locations, I cannot wait, because the towns in Rebirth are some of my favorite out there in all of video games. The Northern Crater looks incredible. But the last thing I'll talk about here is it's really interesting what they do with Cloud, because Cloud in Rebirth is very clearly unwell. He is seeing Aerith, whether that is a perception of Sephiroth or Jenova implanted upon his mind to delude him, whether that is Aerith protecting him, paradoxically going against what she represents to keep him together, whether it's both. Cloud is unwell, but they show him in the trailer. What they show in the trailer is a Cloud who seems okay. They very deliberately sidestep that. But he's deeply psychologically damaged, and they sidestep that and don't show that. He's on the brink, and like I said, this story will get into very, very deep darkness, specifically associated with Cloud and his mindset, because saving Cloud, I think, means saving the world. The world, Sephiroth, and Cloud are inextricably linked in a much more intimate way than they were in the OG. Talked about this in my video as well. And so saving him will be essential, but there is a line in the trailer, the live stream sequence will be the most important in the whole story. And Tifa's essential for that. I think Aerith will be essential for that. I think that's the moment where Cloud will realize the truth of what happened and healthily integrate the idea of death and the cycle and the live stream and be empowered by Aerith and maybe by Zack to then go towards the final fight. And what they represent and the finality of that. But there's a line in the trailer about that ascent where he goes, "I never would have made it this far without you guys, and I won't let you down." That is in English. In Japanese, it's translated more like, "Thanks to everyone." I believe I saw this from a tweet somewhere. Apologies, I can't recall it. "Thanks to everyone, I was able to make it here. I won't get lost or waver anymore. Let's save the planet." I think this was from Lollipopo or El Popo on Twitter. So there's a bit of a different nuance there, but regardless, I feel like he's talking to both the party, maybe to Aerith, and Zack, but that's what a lot of people are running with, but I think it's more of a cohesive everyone. Thank you everyone for supporting me in all the ways you did, because Tifa did, Aerith did, the party did, Zack did, all the people along the journey. So I think he's talking about that more generally. But I guess we'll see. But it's very noteworthy that he's surrounded by whispers, mostly white whispers. There are some black whispers there. He sees lilies that are reminiscent of Aerith and her power and her spirit. So Aerith has a presence in this scene as well. I just can't wait for this. When he reclaims himself, when he becomes true Cloud, not the version of him that where he sometimes peeks through, but there's also bits of Zack and bits of the soldier psychology, bits of his hero complex. He'll understand what happened to Aerith, maybe some stuff with Zack. The party will galvanize him. I cannot wait for that. And then in general also, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they close up the stuff with other verses, all the the Buddhist stuff, the Rainbow Realms, Zack's Realm, Elmira, Marley. Like, I want them to close up all this stuff. It doesn't have to be definitively, but I'm really interested to see how all these elements, whether it be more tertiary characters like Elmira or Marlene, or people in the towns, or elements of the town, and the timelines, all these things, I'm really looking forward to them being given a conclusion in one way or another. It doesn't have to be... It can be open-ended, it can be interpretive. I expect lots of elements of this to be interpretive. But I want them to get something, a bit of a spotlight. Sorry, just going through the stuff here. The songs here. There we go. And then we move on to this tweet from Audrey, where there is lots of important information. Let me just fix my camera. So, these all credit to Audrey for these translations from the interview. Lots of really interesting points here. Firstly, player choice will have consequences unlike Rebirth, and this will affect the storytelling of the game. Each player might end up with a completely different experience. However, what's key to note is that this doesn't mean... There's this tweet from Motoko Makima. This does not mean that the endings will be different. There is one ending, respecting the definitive ending of the original, I'm sure, but there will be different experiences for each player depending on where they lean in certain interactions and stuff like that. The storyline won't change, but depending on choices and things you do, the experiences will be different. I imagine maybe different party member scenes, kind of similar to the dates, maybe with a bit more emphasis, but I'm glad it's one ending. The Highwind airship will be available from the beginning, talked about that already, love that choice. The Wear system jobs will be unlocked early, very cool. New stories will be told regarding places not explored much in OG, I love that. That's one of my favorite things about this, re-experience, about the re-trilogy, is exploring areas and giving tons of substance to them, whereas they might not have had as much told about their socioeconomics, their culture, the world building, the narratives, the thematics about them. The Train Graveyard, even though I really criticize the pacing and tone of the Train Graveyard section in Remake, I love what they added to it. You know, there is Gongaga, and how that's expanded upon. Every town is expanded upon, every area. Calm is incredible. Like, I love what they do. I'm glad they're continuing with that. There are a lot of areas you can access with the Highwind early on, but you might not be able to proceed since enemies are incredibly strong. They want players to have the feeling of what should I do first. Kind of very Skyrim-esque, more Breath of the Wild-esque, I guess, which I like. We talked about that. The scale of the open world feel of the game will be greatly expanded. Love that. Talked about that too. Vincent gameplay. Switches between human form and beast form with one button with no time limit. Very cool, like Yuffie Shuriken mode. Sid's combat. Aerial. Makes sense. The synergy stuff I was talking about I really like. Zack will have even more scenes in Part 3 and play an important role. To me, the fallen hero to ascendant hero arc of Zack throughout the first two games, specifically Rebirth, into this, where he will take up the call and continue to try to save the world and save those he cares about, and Cloud and Aerith and everything, is one of my favorite things about it. I think it's, not a lot of people seem to love this, but I think it's done near perfectly so far. I think it has so much impact, and I can't wait to see how it continues. The idea of multiple timelines is conveyed through Zack's presence in his part of the story. Again, multiple timelines, world lines, versus realities. I think that the way I talked about it in my video was talking about them as glimpses through windows, as talked about as through that NPC from Cosmo Canyon. Glimpses through these looking glass windows into different possibilities and realities, rather than timelines maybe, but I don't know. There's also the element of, is this a sequel? In some ways you could argue it is, in some ways you could argue it isn't. I guess we'll see. The voice actor replacement for Reno, because Sugawara. Sorry, let me just make sure I've got the right name here. Fujiwara, excuse me. Keiji Fujiwara passed away after recording his lines for Rebirth. R.I.P. Love his work for Reno, but also in Yakuza with Nishitani, as the Oreo in Hunter x Hunter, in Trails. Lots of great stuff. R.I.P. He's had to be replaced in this game because he passed away. And Reno and the Turks will have a lot of screen time in this game. I love that. I think the Turks are one of the biggest flaws in the original game for reasons I talk about in my videos. I think they're very inconsistent, very uneven, very strange morally. I think they're tackled with a lot more nuance in the re-trilogy, and really like that. And I think the rough edges are smoothed out, and they're a much more cohesive, additive element to the game. So I'm really looking forward to them having more time and presence, and really looking forward to what they contribute to the story. And I think they could have a big part in its sort of end thesis. Wutai is incredibly fleshed out this time around, and the Turks will also be a part of it. Makes sense. They're a part of it in the OG. Wutai will have a very political storyline involved. Love that. I would love a whole arc for Wutai, because that's part of the original game that was originally cut out due to time constraints and such. They didn't explore it as much as they could have, and I think it led to undercutting Yuffie and her family a little bit, undercutting the politics and world building a little bit. I cannot wait to see Wutai. It looks incredible. Those shots of Yuffie looking out at Wutai look incredible. I cannot wait to see how it looks. I can't wait to explore the town, the music, the ambience, the atmosphere, but also the dense politics to do with them, from Yuffie's perspective, selling out to Shinra, but then the nuance of needing to survive as a result in this world. I can't wait for that. In addition, Midgar's back for Part 3 and you can explore again. Makes sense, we revisit Midgar, but I'm really interested to see the things that have changed, maybe more areas of being explorative, and you may encounter some deep ground characters as well. I think it's clear we'll see, well, the main two, but also Sonon, and the impact that could have on Yuffie, because of what happened in Intergrade. I'm down for this stuff. I know some people don't like the deep ground stuff, the allusions to those sorts of works, the ancillary works, they're not really beloved, but I think they're additive as long as they're done with moderation. I think it could be really cool. Rocket Town is in the game. Hamaguchi says they actually want to show it in Rebirth, but decided to have it in Revelation instead. I think that's a good move. Again, talked about this in my video. I think it would have made Rebirth a bit too bloated to have Rocket Town. It worked best for the pacing. It'll be accessible in the latter part of the story. That is surprising to me. They had to rearrange it, so it makes sense that it's not immediate for a lot of reasons, for the pacing, for what has to happen next in the story. But it being towards the latter part is interesting to me, and it makes me wonder how Cid's character is going to be approached, because Cid's character is tied to Rocket Town. So how exactly that's going to result in the pacing and the flow and Cid's character work is interesting. And I'm really looking forward to whatever changes they make and exploring Rocket Town. And this new take on Cid, because he is quite different in this game. There's underwater areas, which makes sense. They're there in the OG. The Knights of the Round summon. They're really putting their all into that. That's very cool. FF7 Revelation does indeed have an ending, and it is one that Hamaguchi's proud of that serves as a conclusion to the series that's taken over 10 years. What the ending will be, you'll just have to experience it for yourself. Here's the thing with this. No one is going to be... Like, this is not going to please everyone. And I think that there will be... This project so far has really made it so that nothing is definitive with a lot of the conclusions. I have my theories, you have your theories. We've had them at the end of Remake, at the end of Rebirth, and they very deliberately tried to not answer anything definitively. Not close off any possibility, because they love people speculating, they love these things being interpretive, but a lot of those paths will be closed off. We'll know about Zack's fate, we'll know about Aerith's fate, we'll know what happens with the multiple shards with certain things about this, there will be questions answered, and not everyone will be happy with them. But I just hope they carry forward their vision in the way most loyal to what they want to do, and I'm super excited for that. I have my utmost trust since the very beginning, since the beginning of Remake. I have put my trust in this group. Remake is one of the most important games I've ever played. It and Rebirth, and it really helps me fall in love with this world. It is one of the most important stories to me, ever. And I've consistently said that the ending of this game could symbolize this re-trilogy being my favorite video game story. I thoroughly think that, I completely think that could happen. It's already one of my favorites. FF7 Remake and Rebirth together is one of my favorite video game stories. Top 5 for sure. So I could see it being top 1 after this. And while there are, nothing's perfect, there are mistakes, there are flaws. But Rebirth has so few, in my opinion. I think they learned a lot. There will be flaws in Revelation, but I am putting my utmost trust in their vision, because the vast majority of their vision has not led us wrong and has been exceptional. And I can't wait to see what their vision is. At the same time, because of the nature of this story, the stylistics, the identity of this story, I think there will be elements that are up for interpretation, that will have people debating for years after, that will be open-ended. And I love that too, because I think it would be a little weird if everything was tied up in a nice little bow, everything completely clear about what happens with everything. I think there's going to be some interpretive, open-ended stuff. And I think that sort of abstract boldness is core to the identity of this part of FF7, of the re-trilogy. At the same time, it will remain loyal to the soul of the OG, as you would expect. The affinity system is returning. I love that. I loved building a relationship with characters through interactions throughout the towns. That's one of my favorite additions of Rebirth. Love that it's here to flesh out the characters. I'm here for the characters. Many things. But specifically, more than anything, probably the characters. And I can't wait to be able to flesh them all out. I'll be doing my utmost to get every little bit of dialogue from each of them. Every little bit of context. Can't wait for the affinity. So yeah, and there's different ways of exploring and learning more about certain characters. Different from Rebirth. So that's really interesting. That might tie in with Affinity, the new Affinity system. Then Hamaguchi doesn't really like the concept of multiple endings, and as a creator wants to deliver a confident ending to the remake series. However, player choice will heavily affect which outcome you get that actually changes the storytelling. Again, one ending, one definitive ending, but maybe different paths, different focuses on different characters, maybe encouraging replays, I don't know. I'm down with that. At least with how vague this is, that sounds like it could be cool. Minigames will not be less in number, but they'll be toning down the difficulty for those who had issues with them in Rebirth. This is something that's interesting, and I think it ties in with what they've said over the last couple years about they will be streamlining certain things, like there will be more of a narrative focus as opposed to Rebirth, which had obviously a narrative focus, but also more of a last hurrah of sort of the quirkiness of this. I imagine there will be quirkiness in this game, there will be silliness, but this, I think, specifically the start of this game, will have a lot of dreariness and darkness. And so I imagine they might shift the tone of that a little bit, maybe introduce the minigames later, maybe the minigames will be less silly or fun, quote-unquote, but it seems like they're going to be streamlined a little bit, so as the game will be the same size as Rebirth, maybe bigger, maybe a little bit smaller, but roughly the same size, but they will prioritize different things. The minigames will be a huge part of it, as they are with all of FF7 OG, but maybe they'll be like less difficulty. They've also said in the past that maybe a bit less emphasis, a bit less bulk. I don't know exactly, but there's going to be a bit of an adjustment while not getting rid of minigames, which I'm all for. I'm one of those people who loved the vast majority of minigames in FF7 Rebirth, and I'm really delighted that they'll be returning but you gotta adjust as you're in different parts of the story, and it seems like they're doing that. I hope Queen's Blood's back. I adore Queen's Blood. Also, this is fun. The slap fight between Scarlet and Tifa will be in the game, and it will be a mini-game. So, with prompts or whatever. That's fun. And then lastly, the theme of FF7 Revelation is resolve. Everyone's followed the journey of Cloud and his friends for almost a decade at this point, and the story is filled with determination as it heads to its finale. Very meta for the staff as well, I'm sure. Yeah, the development team has put their resolves into delivering something truly great for everyone to enjoy. Resolve, Cloud finding himself, reclaiming himself, resolve for all the journeys of the party, specifically Yuffie with her quest to reclaiming her home or doing right, carrying forth the torch of her home and that identity. Tifa for helping and supporting Cloud while also bearing the burden of her home, of her world, of Midgar. Barrett and all that he fights for. Vincent and his baggage. Caden, his renewed vigor and his renewed purpose. And Nanaki and what he wants to do for the planet he loves. And Sid for all that he's fighting for in his personal quest. The resolve of Aerith through what she's doing with Cloud and trying to save him and protect him from the beyond. Through Zack, through multiple world lines or realities or shards or whatever they are going to end up being. His resolve, and the resolve of Sephiroth to persist and exist, and how that will be combated by the resolve of the party, and hopefully lead him into realizing the beauty of the world, how he can be connected, and even though he had a horrible, tragic existence, maybe there is something to seek solace in. Maybe a resolve to find that solace for him. To find it through Cloud, through Aerith. A resolve for Rufus. The resolve of Hojo, the horrible resolve. I don't know, guys. This is just me sort of spewing my thoughts about this because I felt it was appropriate to do today. Just sort of stream of consciousness, like, I cannot wait. Probably less than a year. It's June now, spring 2027. Oh, the countdown begins, guys. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I've said it since Remake. I believe in this game. I believe in this project. I believe in this staff. They have not done me wrong yet. They've delivered me an incredible game in Remake and a masterpiece in Rebirth, and one of my favorite games ever. Cohesively, this is something I feel so much. My heart swells thinking about and playing this series. The ideas, the concepts, the characters, the intimacy, the silliness, the darkness, the high abstract scale and epicness, the incredible gameplay, the towns and the world and the music. I love everything about it. I love everything about this. And this could easily become my favorite game story ever. Maybe in a year's time, I will have a new favorite game or game story. Now, of course, there's more FF14, there's Evercold, there's Cyberpunk Orion, there's Witcher 4, there's Deltarune. So there will be a lot of contenders for that. But this is the game I most look forward to in my life. Just about. Others come very close. But this is it. And so, we're here. We're here. I can't wait. This series changed my life, and I cannot wait to see how it ends. And of course, I will be putting together a video analysis, video essay for it, as I've done for Remake and Rebirth. So I'll be working on that, but mostly, I don't want to think about work right now. I just want to think about the game, and pouring myself into it, and seeing this vision come together. Again, check out those videos if you haven't already. I'm really proud of them, and I think they're really good, especially the Rebirth one. And I don't say that lightly, I don't often say that. But if you're interested in my thoughts put together and polished, I think it's a great video. I do, and it's something I'm really proud of, and it's probably, if I had to say what my favorite video I made is, that's it. But yeah, more importantly, the wait for this begins. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. I'll be keeping an eye on more news as it comes out, but I don't really want to super pour myself into expanding on every detail and theorizing about every little bit. I kind of just want to take it naturally and let it come as it comes. And what am I even saying? What am I talking about? I can't wait. Thank you guys so much for watching. History is upon us. We're here. I'll see you in the next one. Man, I don't even know. I had a video scheduled for today about different anime, non-shonen, non-seinen anime, and I had to delay it for this. Whatever. Maybe I'll put that out tomorrow or another day. Anyway, see you guys.